which one of the following most accurately and completely describes the function of the second paragraph of the passage? This is like a role question in logical reasoning. You're trying to figure out what role that paragraph plays. I had to go back and reread it to make a prediction because I couldn't remember what was discussed in the second paragraph. When I went back there, notice what it says here. It talks about how natural selection is generally held to result in adaptation. So that's an opinion of most people. And then it says, if the strict constructionists are right, the persistence of every attribute and the survival of every species are due to such adaptation. And then it says, so that's not saying that they are right. It's just like, if they are right, here's this consequence, right? And then it says, but in fact, there are examples that this is not the case. So I would say that this paragraph right here, the paragraph's now over, right? I feel like this paragraph is the main point. It's like, hey, if they're right, this is what's going to happen, but that never happened, so they're wrong. And then the rest of the passage goes on and shows why they're wrong. So my prediction was main point. That's the second paragraph. A, it outlines the objections to traditional evolutionary theory raised by the strict constructionists. No, it doesn't outline their objections. If anything, it just says if they're right, then this is what should happen. It doesn't tell us what they think. So this is wrong. B, it lists recent evidence suggesting that the strict constructionist claims described in the first paragraph are incorrect. I kept this open. Was anyone tempted by this? No one. Okay. I was tempted because my prediction was, hey, this is the main point. I didn't like the fact that it says it lists recent evidence, like, oh, this laundry list, where really it's just this one sentence at the end, but I was like, well, maybe. So A is out, B is open. C, it describes the strict constructionist view of evolutionary theory in order to explain why the evidence described in subsequent paragraphs has recently gotten so much attention. I'm like, I have no idea whether it has attention or not, so this is out. D, it enumerates the arguments for the strict constructionist position. That can just, no, right? It didn't say, hey, here are all the reasons why they're right. It just said, if they're right, this is what will happen. So that's out. E, it explains the ramifications of the strict constructionist claims and helps clarify the relevance of evidence offered in subsequent paragraphs. I feel like this is better because B says it lists recent evidence, and this is actually saying, look, here are the ramifications, here's what would happen if they're right, and then helps us understand why they're going to show us that they're wrong. So E is the best. Yes?
I know you said in the past that the reading comprehension get harder as you go on.
Yeah.
Is it the passages that get harder or the questions?
It can actually be both. So sometimes what happens is that a passage will be very hard to read, especially natural like science passages. People are like, oh, I didn't follow it, blah blah blah, and then the questions are like easy. They're just like, were you awake enough? You know, like you didn't give up. And then sometimes the passage is hard to understand, and the questions are hard to understand. And sometimes the passages are easy. You're like, yeah, oh sweet, and then you go into the questions and the answer choices, the tempting wrong answer and the correct answer are so close together that you're like parsing through that and you're just wasting all this time, and that's what makes it hard. I would say that the older reading comp passages were easier in large part because the answer choices themselves were further apart. When the answer choices are close, sometimes it comes down to these words like generally, or tends to, or most, and you just like miss it, but then when you see it, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's true for most of the cases, I just know that it's true for several that were discussed. So, cool.